There is a concern you hear often when AI comes up in counseling. If a computer is helping document the session, does that take the clinician out of the room? Because at the center of this work is presence, attention, connection. And many clinicians have been trained, and rightly so, that documentation can interfere with that. Remembering phrasing, typing during sessions, holding details in working memory while trying to stay engaged. So the question becomes, does AI make that better or worse? Because if it pulls attention away from the client, it is not an improvement. But if it removes the cognitive load of documentation, something different starts to happen.
To understand how AI can improve human connection in counseling, you have to understand where attention goes during a session. Clinicians are doing multiple things at once: listening to the client, tracking themes and symptoms, recalling historical context, thinking about interventions, and remembering what needs to be documented. That last one matters more than most people realize, because even when a clinician is not typing, part of their attention is still allocated to, how am I going to write this note later? That is cognitive overhead, and cognitive overhead competes directly with genuine authenticity and presence.
Ambient AI changes that dynamic, not by replacing the clinician, but by removing one category of mental load. When documentation is handled in the background, the clinician does not need to mentally rehearse the note. They are not deciding what to capture versus what to let go. They are not splitting attention between listening and remembering. That frees up capacity, and that capacity shifts back to the client.
In a traditional session, clinicians will listen, think, and remember. In an AI-supported session, that shifts to listen, think, and respond. And that shift shows up in subtle but meaningful ways. More eye contact, fewer interruptions, increased clinician attunement, more natural pacing. Clinicians are able to follow the client's language more closely. Instead of steering toward what needs to be documented, they can stay with emotion longer, allow silence when it matters, because they are not carrying the burden of capturing everything.
It is also important to be clear about what AI is not doing. It is not interpreting the relationship. It is not deciding what is clinically relevant or important. It is not replacing clinician judgment. The clinician still leads the session, still makes meaning, still determines what belongs in the record. The AI is simply supporting the documentation process, so the clinician stays more fully engaged in the human process. And then after the session, instead of reconstructing what happened from memory, the clinician is reviewing the structured draft. That means less time spent recalling and more time spent reflecting and refining, which is a very different cognitive task and a much lighter one.
Let's walk through what this looks like operationally. During the session, the clinician is not typing. They are not summarizing in real time. The conversation unfolds fluidly and naturally. The ambient AI is listening in the background, capturing structure, not just words. Nothing changes about how the clinician practices, but everything changes about what they are carrying cognitively. Now, after the session, a structured note draft is created, not just a transcript. Strategically guided by AI prompts, the clinical content is mapped and summarized to the encounter note template sections. The clinician reviews, adjusts wording, adds nuance, cites additional clinical context, removes anything unnecessary, and then signs. What used to take 10 to 15 minutes of reconstruction becomes 2 to 3 minutes of review. And more importantly, that time is no longer competing with the session itself. You've seen these numbers before, 3 to 4 hours back every week per clinician. It bears repeating. The same supervision structure remains intact. If anything, documentation becomes more accurate and consistent because the first draft is structured the same way every time. For training sites who are teaching trainees to write clinical documentation without an AI assist, the clinical supervisor may use an AI assist to efficiently review each section for quick, deliberate feedback. Supervisors leveraging an AI assist within a trainee's encounter notes allow for improved clinical note feedback opportunities in time-limited supervision sessions. So the operational change is not just faster documentation. It is a redistribution of attention from after-hours recall back into the session where it belongs. So here are 4 takeaways to keep in mind. First, this is not about replacing the clinician. It is about removing cognitive load that pulls them away from the client. Second, presence and attunement are not just personal skills. They are influenced by workflow. When documentation burden is high, attention is divided. Third, AI documentation changes when the work happens. Less recall after the session, more engagement during it. And fourth, the goal is not just efficiency, it is quality. Better attention, better listening, stronger connection.
If your clinicians are spending energy remembering what to document, that is energy not fully available to the client. AI, when implemented well, gives that energy back. And if you want to see what that looks like in a system designed for counseling centers, there's a link below to connect with our team.